Welcome to Fantasy Football Today. We're talking running backs today. We're going to take a look at our running back rankings, have some fun debates, tell you about some strategy, and help you win your leagues. I'm Jamie, that's Dave, that's Heath. We hope to be joined by Adam Azer at some point soon. But we're going to take a look at the top 12 running backs. We're going to spend some time going through as many of the running back rankings as we can. These are our consensus rankings for 2020 for the three of us. But obviously, we differ a little bit in how we rank these guys. These are PPR rankings. We'll work in some other conversations as well throughout the course of the hour. But let's start with the top 12 guys. No surprise with the name at the top when you see Christian McCaffrey there. But after that, could be a little bit different in how we go about putting these lists together. Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook. You can expect all those guys to be first-round picks in the majority of leagues. And then it really starts to differ once we get to number 6 with Sanders, Eckler, Drake, last year's rushing champion, Derrick Henry, and you see the rest of the list there, including a rookie at the end at number 12, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'll talk about him as well. But let's get into the conversation with the guy at number 2. Saquon Barkley is the consensus number 2, but our buddy Heath Cummings does not agree with that. Heath has Zeke all the way down at number 5. Mr. Cummings, explain yourself.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit worried about the way the Dallas offense changed in 2019. It was very, very good for Dak Prescott. It was good for offensive efficiency. It was a smart plan. It was not as many short passes to Ezekiel Elliott. I do think when you look at them adding CeeDee Lamb to this passing attack, they are going to continue to be a very vertical passing attack, which is going to cut down on the targets and receptions for Zeke. We really only saw that 1 year where he was heavily involved as a pass catcher, and so that will keep him behind some of those other top 5 backs.
Number 5, Dave. Tell him why he's wrong.
Because Ezekiel Elliott's awesome, and the fact that they added CeeDee Lamb to make it a more vertical passing offense is going to help him be a more efficient running back. And let's face it, last year wasn't bad for his reception totals either. I've got him at number 2 in PPR. I thought I was going to have to defend that against Saquon Barkley. That's a tough debate to make. But to have him at 5th or lower, you're just giving away a great running back who's been unbelievably consistent in fantasy football his entire career to somebody else in your league. You can't do that. Zeke is at worst 3rd overall in fantasy. I don't see him slowing down 1 iota in 2020.
I'm going to tell you why you're both wrong, because Saquon Barkley should be number 2 after Christian McCaffrey, but Zeke should be number 3. Heath, you're just a little bit too low on Zeke. I think he's going to be the 3rd best running back. And Dave, I think you're a little bit too high just by 1 spot. I think Barkley should be number 2. But of course, my rankings are perfect, so why would you listen to me? Let's go now to the next topic we're going to get into here, and that's Miles Sanders. So we have Miles Sanders, we have Austin Eckler, we have Kenyon Drake. We have guys that are entering the top 12 really for the first time, and should be rightfully so. You're looking at guys that are coming off either strong seasons last year or the chance to build off some strong performances to end the season and finish this year as top 12 guys. So Heath, you've been banging the drum for Austin Eckler really for the last 2 seasons. He really lived up to the expectations last year with Melvin Gordon starting the year off with the holdout and then continued to be a strong fantasy option throughout the course of the season. Miles Sanders coming off the strong campaign, and then obviously Kenyon Drake after the trade to the Cardinals. So Heath, defend Austin Eckler, why he should be a top 12 pick this year.
Not just a top 12 pick, he should be in the top half of the top 12. I've got him at number 6. He's the only one of these 3 guys, and I don't necessarily disagree with Sanders, Drake, or Eckler being in the top 12, but he's the only one who has been a top 12 running back over a full season. You might say, well, yeah, because Melvin Gordon was gone the first 4 games. He was actually a top 12 PPR back after Melvin Gordon came back as well. So we already seen Eckler do it over a full season. I don't think Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson are going to take the same share of touches that Gordon has in years past. Eckler has a very good chance to finish this year. If he plays 16 games, the expectation should be he's a top 5 running back in PPR.
All right, I guess the one concern would be is that the quarterback change. Phillip Rivers is going to dump the ball off more so than Tyrod Taylor will. A lot of people concerned about that. Taylor will obviously run more than Rivers ever will. And so when you look at that aspect of what Eckler's game could be, while the carries could come up, the catches may come down just a little bit. Does that concern you at all about the quarterbacks being different?
It concerns me a little bit in terms of the drop-off from Rivers. I just think that any quarterback would be a drop-off from Rivers because he dumps it off as much as anybody except for maybe Tom Brady. Tyrod Taylor, while he is a running quarterback and he's certainly more athletic than Phillip Rivers, has not shied away from throwing the ball to running backs. He's not quite like a Lamar Jackson type where he's just going to run all the time. He does throw to his running backs, and maybe most importantly, this offense that the Chargers have, it's not as if all of Eckler's catches are coming when the quarterback gets in trouble and dumps it off to him. They have a lot of designed plays where he's lining up in the slot, or it's designed to throw it to him out of the backfield. So it's not just when the quarterback gets in trouble and dumps it off.
So you're going to be aggressive in drafting Austin Eckler. Dave, you're going to be aggressive, as we've seen, in drafting Miles Sanders. You've taken him as high as number 7 overall. Tell us why.
Well, in his last 8 games, including the playoffs last year, he was averaging close to 20 touches per game, averaging over 95 total yards per game. He had 4 touchdowns in those 8 games. I think that number could especially go up because I expect him to be the lead back in Philadelphia. We haven't seen that from the Eagles for a while, where they lean on one guy. But I think Sanders is so versatile in his skill set that he can be a first down back, a second down back, and a third down back. And listen, Boston Scott's going to work in there and get a little bit, but I think Miles Sanders is going to be that guy. And the Eagles could have added a rookie in the draft. They didn't do it. They added a lot of speed, though, at wide receiver, and that's going to force safeties to play back. Kind of like what I was saying with Ezekiel Elliott. That passing game is a real threat now in Philadelphia. It should make things easier for Miles Sanders, who's running behind a great offensive line. So as long as he's averaging around 4 catches per game, he's going to stay as the goal line guy for Philadelphia. I think he's got a chance to finish as a first-round type of fantasy running back. So I'm going to take him then.
I think the one thing we got to keep an eye on with Sanders with his reception total is, as we saw at the end of last season, that Philadelphia receiving corps was absolutely decimated. So while they will throw to him, they will throw to Boston Scott. They obviously have now more weapons to use in the passing game, so the play calling could be a little bit different. And we're all kind of waiting to see, just because it's Philadelphia, are they going to bring in a veteran guy, Devontae Freeman, Carlos Hyde, Lamar Miller, somebody who's out there just to ruin things maybe a little bit. But for right now, Miles Sanders looks like a potential first-round pick. I think just number 7, a little bit too soon. We had a fun conversation about that on our Fantasy Football Today podcast. You can find that wherever podcasts are found. Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers joined us today. Fun conversation about that Miles Sanders pick at number 7. For Kenyon Drake, we're looking at a running back that really took off last year after he joined the Cardinals. Hopefully that's something that continues. As we saw, no David Johnson. He's now in Houston as part of the DeAndre Hopkins trade. And Drake was just absolutely awesome. Closed the season with his final 3 games, 17 or more PPR points, averaged over 19 PPR points when he became a member of the Cardinals. And we've seen, at times, part of his tenure in Miami, last year with the Cardinals, he can be an elite fantasy running back, somebody you should look for in the round 2 range. Again, a similar situation to the other guys we've been talking about. Some competition for carries, just not significant. I don't think Chase Edmonds or Eno Benjamin are taking Kenyon Drake off the field for significant stretches. Let's go now to another guy in the top 12, a very polarizing one, and that's Derrick Henry. Led the NFL in rushing last year, 18 total touchdowns. He's been a touchdown machine each of the last 2 seasons, but as we know, hard for guys to replicate that type of performance when they're coming off the workload that he had last year, over 400 total touches when you factor in the playoffs. So Dave, Derrick Henry, PPR, is he a first-round pick?
He's not a first-round pick. He's a second-round pick, and it could be toward the end of round 2 where you'd feel comfortable taking him. And it's really just because he doesn't catch the ball, and you've got to compare him with all the other running backs and receivers that have potential to get, with receivers, you're talking about guys with 80-plus catches. That's a lot of touchdowns that he's going to have to make up for if he's not catching the ball. Now, he told us during Super Bowl week that he does plan on getting a bigger role in the passing game, but what does that really mean? That could mean like 20 or 30 catches. Yes, that would be an upgrade for him, but it wouldn't be enough. So he's got to be able to do more as a rusher to make up for that lack of reception total that he has. And furthermore, the question about was he overworked last year? Man, we got a good close look at that dude, and you have to be an anomaly to have back-to-back seasons with over 350 plus touches in the NFL. It's the way that it works. He looks like an anomaly. He's a giant. He's tough to stop. I wouldn't hate taking him in late round 2. I'm not going to completely avoid him, PPR, non-PPR, because I think he can still be a very good running back despite the workload last year.
Heath, give me some a comparison here to Derrick Henry for guys like Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb. They're all going to be kind of in the same range. Those 2 guys, a little bit better pass catchers than Derrick Henry, but not significantly enough. How does Henry compare to Mixon? How does he compare to Chubb?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic than you guys are on Henry. There certainly is concern with injury, and we can't look past it. There's concern that he breaks down. I expect the Titans' offense to regress a little bit. but his situation is so much better than that of Joe Mixon or Nick Chubb. Chubb, we know, is going to share a lot with Kareem Hunt. I don't know that we should expect a lot more catches for Chubb than for Henry, and he's not on a team that's probably going to be as successful running the ball as Henry's is. Mixon's on the Bengals, who should be improved, but they're not going to have an offensive line as good as the Titans. I don't expect their offense to be as good as the Titans. I don't think Mixon's, again, he's going to catch 10 or 15 more balls than Henry is, but they still have not used him as a true feature back and a third down guy. So I don't know that the advantages that Chubb and Mixon might have in a small increase in catches makes up for the fact that when Derrick Henry gets the ball 20 times a game, he's an absolute monster, and teams just can't tackle that dude 20 times in a game without letting him bust one long. So as long as he stays healthy, I think Derrick Henry is likely to be a top 7 or 8 back in PPR and worth an early second-round pick.
Hard to predict health. I mean, that's never something we're going to tell you to bank on, but the track record for running backs with that level of workload, including for the Titans, little history lesson. Eddie George in 2000 had a monster season, over 400 total touches. He had nearly 2,000 total yards and close to 20 touchdowns. Came back the following season, 2001, was not very good. Hopefully the same thing does not happen to Derrick Henry this year, but he's somebody I'm personally avoiding just because I don't love taking these guys coming off these heavy workloads. The track record, not good. I would take Joe Mixon. I would take Nick Chubb over him. And Chubb, as we saw, had more carries than Derrick Henry last year, even with Kareem Hunt on the roster. And with Kevin Stefanski, I think we're going to see maybe more rushing attempts even coming his way this year. He could be a guy that we're talking about going into 2021 as someone to avoid if the workload gets too high for him, although Kareem Hunt's presence probably going to make that difficult to happen. Let's talk a little strategy now here as we get into how maybe you should pick running back. So, Dave, I know you're going to take Miles Sanders at 7, but let's just say you go a different route. So the 5 guys that we typically are drafting are off the board here. You're looking at, obviously, McCaffrey, Barkley, Zeke, Kamara, Cook. Those guys are gone. Michael Thomas is gone. Are you really still going to take Miles Sanders there, or are you really going to look at maybe taking another wide receiver in a 3-receiver league?
The reason why I'm taking Miles Sanders ahead of those receivers is because I want to grab a running back that's got that 1,500 total yard, 10 touchdown potential, especially one that's got a chance to pick up 50 catches along the way, which I think Miles Sanders checks the boxes for. I think I can find a receiver in the middle of round 2 who can fit the bill as a number 1 guy for my fantasy team. So I'm going to go after a running back first, thinking that position could dry out sooner, and I can get good value at wide receiver in round 2.
Keith, how many running backs should be drafted in the first 2 rounds? I mean, we're going to see, PPR, 3 receivers. It's going to vary by, the number of roster spots you have to fill and the positions you have to fill. But typically, what are we going to see in the first 2 rounds? 10 guys, 12 guys, 15 guys? Give me a number of what we're going to see from running backs in those first 24 picks.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a PPR league where there's 3 wide receivers needed, I really don't think there should be more than 12 running backs taken. But there will be in some drafts. It's going to be somewhere in that 10 to 14 range. I'm pretty much leaning towards, if I have a pick after where you were giving Dave at the end of the first round and then at the start of the second, I'm probably starting with a wide receiver and a tight end or 2 wide receivers. So I'm going to cut down on that total number of running backs. But towards the back half of the second round, I think you're going to see another run on running back. So it'll be in that 10 to 14 range. I would prefer it be right around 11 or 12.
And once we start to see average draft position data coming in, the quarterbacks will most likely be in the first 2 rounds. That might push a couple of those running backs and receivers as well into early round 3. You're talking about guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, maybe Miles Sanders. I know Dave's going to take him in the first round, but I think ADP is going to tell us probably toward the end of round 2, maybe beginning of round 3. So you're going to see some of those guys start to fall. Kenyon Drake maybe in that conversation, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon as well. So be interesting to see once we get the ADP data toward the end of the summer, how those running backs are going to go in the first 2 rounds. But for now, we are going to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe not Heath as much, but aggressive in taking those running backs because we don't take those quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds. All right, when we come back, we're going to tell you about some other running back situations that you are certainly curious about and some guys that are maybe in trouble with some workload issues. Devin Singletary getting company. You see some other running backs like Aaron Jones getting company as well. We'll tell you about those guys next year on CBS Sports HQ. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. We're taking a look at our running back rankings for 2020, having some fun debates. And now we're joined by our buddy, Adam Mazer. I'm Jamie. That's Dave. That's Heath. Let's get right to it. These are the rankings that we're talking about. Consensus for 13 through 24. And some interesting names on this list as we look at some guys that could be in trouble with their potential workloads. You got Le'Veon Bell, who's got company. Chris Carson may have some company. Aaron Jones, more company. James Conner, company. Devin Singletary, move on over. You got a new roommate. DeAndre Swift making company for Kerryon Johnson, and Mark Ingram, another guy that got some additional help in the NFL draft. So let's talk about some of these questionable backfields, and we'll start with the one in Green Bay where the Packers took A.J. Dillon in round 2 and did not give Aaron Rodgers a lot of help with his receiving corps. So Dave, what does this mean for Aaron Jones with A.J. Dillon now a member of the Packers?
All this close working. I thought we were supposed to be social distancing these days. Look, Aaron Jones, I don't know what he did wrong to get A.J. Dillon in his kitchen. He was good in terms of converting short yardage plays, scored a bunch of touchdowns from short yardage for Green Bay. He was 8 of 13 in goal-to-go carries from 3 yards or closer. I think he's still got a chance to be a good running back, but there's something going on here. They must love A.J. Dillon to the point where they took him with the late second-round pick, and they're going to incorporate him into the offense. And I'd be kind of surprised if it was just to be a replacement for Jamal Williams, who wasn't quite as efficient as Aaron Jones. We know Jones is going into a contract year. We know that he's had an injury history. So there could be there could be a situation where the Packers decide, you know what, we're going to cut your workload just a little bit. We're going to lean on this big guy who's like Derrick Henry, and that could come out in his fantasy production. So I'm a little nervous about Aaron Jones heading into 2020.
We have a new segment we're going to do on our podcast. It's where Adam tells me a deep, dark secret, and I reveal it on one of our broadcasts. And we're going to start that right now. So I called Adam last night, and I said, Adam, which running back do you want to talk about? And he said, don't tell anybody this, but I want to reveal it tomorrow on CBS Sports HQ. So Adam, Le'Veon Bell, he's all yours.
Oh, yes. The big secret was I think Le'Veon Bell is not very good anymore. Are you kidding me? 13 in the consensus rankings, guys? You are failing our audience. You need to lower Le'Veon Bell. They brought in Frank Gore. Frank Gore's had about 160 carries 2 straight seasons. Nobody on the Jets came even close to that after Le'Veon Bell. He was a complete workhorse. That's going to change a little bit. I think over 100 carries for Frank Gore. 100 very unproductive, meaningless carries for Frank Gore. But Le'Veon Bell, I just think he's at that age. The offensive line's still not going to be good, I really don't think. He hasn't had explosive plays. Didn't have a 20-yard carry last year. Hasn't had a 30-yard carry in either of his last 2 seasons. The guy's not good, and the coach doesn't really seem that committed to him. There is a super low floor with Le'Veon Bell. That guy needs to be lower in your rankings.
I'm with you. I think he'll probably continue to fall as we digest more of the Frank Gore situation joining the Jets. But yeah, 13 seems a little bit too soon for what he did last year even, and now more mouths to feed. Don't forget about LaMichael Pirine, who the Jets added in the NFL draft. So it could be tough for Le'Veon Bell to be that much better than he was last year. I will disagree with you. I do think the offensive line for the Jets will be better after drafting Becton in the first round
better,
as well.
But not good.
Better but not good. Fair enough. Another backfield situation we got to keep an eye on is the one in Pittsburgh. Steelers have been talking a lot this offseason about upgrading their ground game, and they did so through the NFL draft, potentially by adding Anthony McFarland. So Heath, you look at James Conner, still a good number 2 running back, or one that you maybe settle for on draft day?
Yeah, probably one of the winners of the draft with the reports that we were getting before the draft. The fact that he competes against a 4th round pick now instead of possibly a 2nd round pick, instead of one of those top 5 running backs that we all thought were probably all better than James Conner, I'll take this. I still expect him to lead this backfield. Maybe he only gets a 55% share of the carries. I think he's their best pass-catching back. Jalen Samuels needs to go away. So I still expect him to be a very solid number 2. I think there's low-end number 1 upside if McFarland's just not that good as a rookie.
Conner also has to stay healthy, struggled with injuries each of the last 2 seasons, even in his breakout campaign in 2018. But having a healthy Ben Roethlisberger back will certainly make Conner's outlook that much better. So I'm cheating a little bit here. We had one rookie that we showed you in 13 through 24. We had Clyde Edwards-Helaire creep into the top 12, but we're going to talk about these 2 rookies here. So Heath, you're the Chiefs guy. How excited are you about Edwards-Helaire joining the Chiefs with the 32nd overall pick in the 1st round of the NFL draft?
Oh, for the Chiefs and for Edwards-Helaire's long-term outlook, it could not be more exciting. This is a match made in heaven. Patrick Mahomes wanted him. Andy Reid, everybody in the Chiefs wanted him, and he fits perfectly with what they do. He'll be a better version of Damian Williams when Damian Williams has been good. I do think for fantasy purposes, he could get off to a bit of a slow start. I expect Damian Williams to start week 1. If Damian Williams stays healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts the first 8 weeks of the season, and it's closer to a 50-50 timeshare. Edwards-Helaire will be more productive with his touches, but I don't feel confident he's going to steal the red zone work right away. So I like him as a number 2 running back. I would not have him in my top 12, though.
You're just wrong. That's wrong. He's a top 12 pick, Heath. Come on. You're the Chiefs guy. You're supposed to support these guys. You're supposed to love these guys. You're supposed to tell everybody to draft them. Look, I'm probably a little bit too high on Edwards-Helaire, but I love the situation. I love the fit. I think he's going to be an absolute star. He's got the next potential to be one of the best Andy Reid running backs that we've seen. Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, and Kareem Hunt, who he had with the Chiefs as a rookie, and have had him lead the NFL in rushing in 2017. No lofty expectations for Edwards-Helaire to live up to. Dave, you're excited about DeAndre Swift going to Detroit. Kerryon Johnson's still there. How's that going to work?
I think it's going to be DeAndre Swift eventually running away with the job because Kerryon Johnson hasn't been consistent, unless you're talking about injuries. He's been pretty consistent there. A knee injury has sidelined him each of his 2 seasons in the league. Swift just brings a different vibe with him, man. He's fast. He's a good pass catcher. I think he's adequate as a pass blocker. And he's a good zone runner, which I think the Lions are going to do more of. I don't think he's going to be good enough to where Matthew Stafford's only attempting 500 passes over the course of the year. But I think he gives the Lions their first legitimate 1,000-yard running back candidate since the days of, I guess I have to go back to Reggie Bush. I don't think Kerryon can do it. And if the coaches thought Kerryon can do it, they wouldn't have drafted DeAndre Swift. I like the idea of getting DeAndre Swift somewhere in between the middle of round 5 and the beginning of round 6.
I think it's going to end up being a 5th-round pick just based on what the expectations will be. And when you get to that muddled area of running backs where you're looking for upside as opposed to downside. But if you are able to get him in round 6, that's probably a good situation because the later, the better. And that could be good for a couple of other rookies as well. So, Adam, I want to ask you, Jonathan Taylor, another 2nd-round pick in the NFL draft. Cam Akers, same thing. Getting very positive reports, as you would expect from the coaches this time of year. Colts coaching staff coming out and saying they have a 1 and 1A between Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. Scout for the Rams said that they view Cam Akers as a workhorse, and they liked getting him in round 2. So those 2 guys belong in this group, again, if you're looking for the most upside at the position.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of upside, probably more with Cam Akers because he has the chance to work on passing downs, and I don't think Jonathan Taylor does as long as Nyheim Hines is healthy. I also think with Jonathan Taylor, let's give Marlon Mack some credit. I don't think Marlon Mack is a great running back. I think Taylor could be so much better behind this Colts offensive line, but Mack has been solid. He's been fine. It's not like they need to upgrade there. It's almost a similar situation to Green Bay where you've got guys that are possibly in their last year with the team, Marlon Mack and Aaron Jones, and I don't see why both of those franchises wouldn't get a lot out of Aaron Jones and Marlon Mack this year and then maybe go to the younger guy. I think Akers has a better chance to just win that job right out of the gate or at least maybe by week 3 and get work on passing down. So I like Taylor's situation better long term. I think this year Akers has a better path. I'd take them very, very similarly. I'd probably change my mind about who I'd take first, but they might be back-to-back for me.
I just feel like Taylor is going to put Marlon Mack on the bench. He's that much more talented than him, and behind that offensive line could be really special. I like Akers a little bit better than Swift. I just think Akers' situation, like you said, he's got the clearer path to touches right away. I don't believe in Darrell Henderson or Malcolm Brown being better talents than Akers, and based on what the coaching staff is starting to say a little bit, it sounds like they may prove that by the end of the season, that Akers could be their lead running back, although, as we saw last year, they stuck with the veteran guy in Todd Gurley as opposed to maybe giving Darrell Henderson an opportunity. Maybe they do the same thing with Henderson and Brown this year. We'll find out, but I'm going to be aggressive in drafting Cam Akers because I do think that his situation at Florida State was that bad that his talent would have been maybe on the level of what we saw with Swift, maybe not Taylor, but a little bit closer, and his numbers would have been a little bit better in college. Let's look at a couple of other veteran situations that we're keeping an eye on. Another secret Adam told me, he loves Melvin Gordon. So Adam, tell us about Gordon and what his outlook could be with the Broncos this year.
I just think Melvin Gordon has one more good year in him. And I think when you start talking about the players that are being drafted around Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell, Leonard Fournette, those franchises seem eager to give up on those players. Todd Gurley didn't look like he had anything left in the tank last year. Melvin Gordon, though, the Broncos really like him. They went out, they got him. They need rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to get almost all of their rushing touchdowns. I do like Phillip Lindsay, and Phillip Lindsay's going to have a role. But I think you look at the bad numbers from Gordon last year, he said he was affected by the holdout. He got off to a slow start because of it. So obviously, great to not have a normal offseason this year, but it'll be different than the holdout. I'm optimistic about him. I think he's going to get a lot of work. I think he's going to approach 50 catches, certainly going to be the passing downs back for the Broncos, and I think he'll have the majority of their rushing touchdowns. He might have 10. So I think he'll give you good value if you're taking him in the third round.
I'm totally with you. I don't know, round 3, maybe toward the end of round 3, but certainly in that round 3-4 range. Better to get him in round 4. But yes, I think if you're talking in comparison to Leonard Fournette and Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, he should be ahead of that group. And maybe ahead of Chris Carson as well, as we continue to find out from Seattle. They just want to replace Chris Carson. They may not do it successfully, but Rashad Penny in the first round a couple of years ago. DJ Dallas this year. They drafted Travis Homer last year. They're talking about maybe bringing back Marshawn Lynch. It just seems like they're not sold on Chris Carson being the guy there, Heath. Why?
I assume because he keeps getting hurt. Now, he's played enough that you wouldn't think they would just give up on him because of that, but he has had some injury problems. I just, like, even if they bring Marshawn Lynch in and they've got DJ Dallas and they've got Rashad Penny maybe coming in at the middle of the year and Homer's still on the roster, Chris Carson's better than all those guys. And every time he gets the football in a football game, he's pretty much awesome. So I'm going to draft him ahead of Melvin Gordon. I'm going to draft him ahead of these guys we've been talking about. I like him at the end of the third round as a high-end number 2 running back.
It really will be dependent on if they bring in Marshawn Lynch and what Penny's situation is. There's talk of maybe Penny being on the PUP list, so Chris Carson just can have a great path to touches, and that's obviously important for a team like Seattle, which we know is going to try and run the ball as much as they can. Maybe the Falcons try to do the same thing. They bring in Todd Gurley on a 1-year deal, didn't add anybody of significance to threaten him for touches. Dave, can we get excited about Todd Gurley once again?
I mean, think about the type of running back that you look for in fantasy. You want a guy that's not sharing the workload. Who's Todd Gurley going to share the ball with in Atlanta? Brian Hill, Kadre Allison, Ito Smith? Those guys have had chances and they've struggled with it. Todd Gurley was a touchdown machine last year, barely got over 1,000 total yards, but that was behind a bad Rams offensive line. I think the Falcons offensive line is significantly better. And I think if they manage Gurley's knee maybe a little bit better than the Rams did, then yeah, Todd Gurley could finish as a top 12 fantasy running back, PPR or non-PPR. You have to get excited about Gurley at this point because the Falcons went into the draft. They didn't get a single running back. The guys behind Gurley on the depth chart stink. I think you could see Todd Gurley have one more really nice season.
The perfect setup for him. It really is. Just a matter of how healthy will he be and how much will the Falcons maybe improve their running game from a year ago. They struggled to run the ball with Devontae Freeman, another running back that was battling through some injuries and couldn't stay healthy. So we'll see if maybe Gurley's got something left in the tank. Only 25 years old, so we'll see if the knee is a problem or maybe the change of scenery going back to the state of Georgia where he played his college football hopefully can rejuvenate some things for Gurley in 2020. And as we heard with our sports update from the great Chris Hassel, the Jaguars still confident in Leonard Fournette. What does that mean for his fantasy value, though? It's hard to say because you have Raekwon Armstead, they bring in Chris Thompson, and as we know, the Jaguars tried to trade him this offseason. It's hard to feel confident about Fournette, especially in PPR where he was so good catching the ball last year. Change in offense coordinator will hurt him. Bringing in Thompson will hurt him. Could be a little bit of a struggle for Fournette, so the luster is off of him a little bit. I think as you continue to see, he falls down our rankings almost on a weekly basis. Somebody that may be outside the top 24 by the time we get to training camp, if in fact he's still a member of the Jaguars by then. I don't buy that they're saying he's in their long-term future. Clearly, he is not. Let's talk a little strategy at the running back position. Dave, when you look at running backs, how many do you think you have to have on your personal fantasy team by the 5th round of a PPR league where you start 3 wide receivers? Do you have to have 2 starters by then? 1 starter? How do you approach it?
At least 2, I think I'd feel comfortable with. Although if I've gotten off to a great start with just absolute values at other positions, and I only have 1 running back, I can live with that because there is some decent depth to the position this year because so many teams are going with an RBBC. So I think you could see a fantasy manager start with a stud running back in round 1, stud tight end in round 2, and maybe 2 stud wide receivers in rounds 3 and 4. And then by round 5, oh, there's Dak Prescott. That's not bad value for him at that point. And then by round 6, you just start gobbling up running backs and you hope to find one along the way to pair with the stud that you drafted early on. I think that's probably my favorite strategy to go with.
Adam, if you start wide receiver, give me some guys that you're looking at in this range. You mentioned Melvin Gordon in round 3. Would you be comfortable with him as your number 1 guy, pairing him with 2 stud wide receivers? Just give me a couple guys that you look for starting round 3 through 5 to maybe start to fill out that running back core.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon and Chris Carson, I think, would be atop the list, whereas Le'Veon Bell and Leonard Fournette really wouldn't. Fournette, a couple weeks ago probably would have, but I think what you said, Jamie's right on. You got to be less enthusiastic about Leonard Fournette. I don't know about the rookies in round 4. I think round 5 for the rookies is when you take a shot, but hopefully they're like my number 3 running back. So Gordon and Carson come to mind immediately. I think this is not the Josh Jacobs range, right? He would be before that, because if he can get Josh Jacobs in round 3, I think that's just an outstanding pick, Jamie. But I think you're probably asking for later than that.
Yeah, Adam, most of us play in 12-team leagues, not 8-team leagues, where Josh Jacobs will not be available probably toward the back end of round 3. But, sure, if you want to change the rules, you can, why don't you just get 2 wide receivers, Christian McCaffrey and Miles Sanders, and have your perfect draft, and you'll be you'll be good to go.
He could be your round 3 pick. He could definitely be your round 3 pick. Okay, so Gordon and Carson, who I'm looking at late round 3, early round 4. After that, I think I don't mind coming away with Raheem Mostert, but in round 6, hopefully for him. He's a guy that might be past the range you were looking for, but I think he's awesome. And I think he's going to score some touchdowns. I know he's not going to catch a lot of passes. Raheem Mostert and Kareem Hunt are good backup plans for me if I'm not feeling great about my running backs.
All right, so Adam's in fantasy land. Heath, you're in reality. Tell me about some running backs that you'd be looking for if you're going 0 RB. So you pass on the first 5 or 6 rounds without taking a running back. Give me some guys. Doesn't necessarily have to be anybody we touched on. Give me 3 or 4 names that you'd be looking for after going 0 RB.
Well, Adam just hit on one of them. In round 6, I love Kareem Hunt in that situation because I do think he has a decent floor and will catch a lot of passes in PPR. I also think you can look to these running backs who likely just lost their job. If you're starting 0 running back, you're going to be turning running backs over throughout the season. You're going to be the first one trying to get one off the waiver wire, spending a lot of fab for it. So you just want some guys that have a role at the beginning of the year. I think Kerryon Johnson, Damian Williams, those guys could absolutely, Marlon Mack could absolutely hold on to their job week 1, week 2, week 3, getting 15 touches and give you some production. And then by the time they get replaced, you've found someone else.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of these guys coming up. When we come back after the break here, though, we're going to get into a little bit more conversation on some of these other rookies that we hit on a little bit. Cam Akers, what's the situation with the Rams? Jonathan Taylor, and you'll see Keyshawn Vaughn as well. Coming up next here on Fantasy Football Today when we break down the running backs on CBS Sports HQ. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. We're taking a look at our running back rankings, our consensus rankings for PPR. We already told you about the first group of 24. Let's take a look now at the list 25 through 36, and gets a little bit more interesting now. A little tougher decisions you're going to have to make when you're drafting running backs in this range, and we tell you some more rookies to kick off the group. Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Keyshawn Vaughn in the top 30. Some veteran guys that you know, Kareem Hunt, James White, second-year guy, and David Montgomery. 2 pairs in this range with 3 Cohen. And some guys that we're still hopeful for, Darius Geis, maybe this is the year. Raheem Mostert, can he carry over what he did last year? And a new running back in Miami with Matt Breida. So let's talk about some of these backfields with the rookies. Adam, I'll start with you. Give me the breakdown for the Rams. Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown. What's it going to be?
Well, if Malcolm Brown is the best guy, that means you probably don't have any good running backs. I understand why, for fantasy purposes, I understand why people are excited about Cam Akers. I just want to caution. We don't know anything about Darrell Henderson. He was, as an NFL running back, he was the 70th overall pick. Cam Akers was 52nd. So it's not like they invested a lot more in Cam Akers, even though Akers was round 2 and Henderson was round 3. But he just didn't get enough work. He averaged 8.2 yards per carry in college. 8.2 yards per carry. Cam Akers averaged 4.9 yards per carry, yes, behind a bad offensive line, but still, that's a pretty low number for a college star. So we just don't know if Darrell Henderson is bad. I think it's too early to write him off. The one guy I'm not drafting is Malcolm Brown, and yes, I would take Cam Akers ahead of Darrell Henderson, but I just think that if you go in there and assume Cam Akers is going to win that job, you might be making a mistake. It's not a bad idea to draft both of them. And I think there's very little interest in Darrell Henderson. So you could pull that off, Cam Akers in round 5, and hopefully 3 rounds later, Darrell Henderson. You'll have to check out ADP. But I think grabbing both of them, at least for the first few weeks, seeing what happens, is not a bad idea.
And as we'll talk a lot about maybe the situation that we're dealing with quarantine and corona and all these things hurting the offseason for NFL teams, rookies may not have the same upside that we typically see, that guys even in good situations may not get off to a good start, and that could be one of them with the Rams. Could be the same thing with the Colts. Heath, give me the breakdown with Jonathan Taylor, Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines. How's that going to all work together?
I mean, if I had to bet on who's going to lead the team in carries week 1, I'd bet all the money on Marlon Mack. For the season, I think it's almost a coin flip, because I do believe Jonathan Taylor is significantly more talented than anyone they have on their roster, and he has the widest range of possibilities of all the rookies. If Taylor won that job week 1, he just comes in and wows the coaching staff. Well, he could be the best rookie running back. He could be a top 12 running back. He could be a top 5 running back. He's that talented in this situation's that good. But also with Hines being there, it really creates a problem in the passing game. Nyheim Hines has not been very good in terms of efficiency on a per target basis. But right now I would anticipate Mack and Taylor sharing the early down work, Hines getting most of the passing game work. I think Taylor can get a little bit more than Mack. I would rather have Taylor on my team than any of them, but he's just a number 3 running back for me.
I'm probably a little bit more optimistic. We know our colleague Ben Gretsch is very optimistic about Jonathan Taylor. But I think Nyheim Hines could be a very nice sleeper this year based on what Phillip Rivers likes to do with throwing the ball to his running backs. And if he's going to be the one playing on passing downs, we could see a significant catch total for Nyheim Hines this year. Dave, give me the Bucs breakdown. Keyshawn Vaughn, Ronald Jones. How's that going to work?
It might not be pretty, unfortunately. We saw Keyshawn Vaughn get picked in round 3, and he was a pretty good back at Vanderbilt, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. It's tough to do in the SEC when you're one of the bottom-feeding teams in the SEC. And I think it speaks to just maybe they want to try and just give Ronald Jones some serious competition. Certainly as a passing downs running back, Vaughn's better already. He's a better pass blocker. He's got better hands than Ronald Jones. He can earn that role for week 1, protecting Tom Brady on those crucial third downs. It's the first and second downs where I think Ronald Jones might have a better edge, and he, like Marlon Mack in Indianapolis, could begin the season as the starter, with Keyshawn Vaughn getting the chance to overtake him. This is a backfield I would actually love to double dip on. I'd like to get Keyshawn Vaughn round 6, round 7, Ronald Jones round 7 through 9, somewhere in that range. Get both of them on your fantasy squad, because at some point during the year, one of the two backs will screw up so badly that Bruce Arians is going to bench him, and the other back will be fantasy gold. So I'm going to draft 2 of the backs, hoping that one becomes a number 2 running back for my team.
I don't think Ronald Jones will get benched, because he will already start the season on the bench, because Keyshawn Vaughn is better than him and will prove to be better than him and will be the best Bucs running back, but not a bad strategy to get both if you can pull it off. All right, so Heath, I know you like Kareem Hunt. We see a lot of these pass catchers going in this range. Hunt, James White, Tariq Cohen. Is this the right spot to look at these guys, or maybe have they fallen a little bit too far given the format with PPR?
I think this is the right spot. If James White had an NFL quarterback, then I would certainly want to take him earlier than this. I think he'd have a chance to be a high-end number 3, maybe a low-end number 2. We just don't know anything about what New England is intending to do. They've kind of drafted and acted as if they're going to try to win with running the football and playing defense. That probably doesn't bode very well for James White. We don't know what Stidham's preferences are, so there's just so much uncertainty around James White that I think this is about the right spot. Tariq Cohen's a little bit more interesting. He's not as good as he was a couple years ago. He's not as bad as he was last year. I expect him to bounce back.
And we'll see how these guys compare to, some non-pass catching guys like David Montgomery, Darius Geis, and Raheem Mostert. But those are the conversations and debates you're probably going to have looking at those type of running backs, Hunt, White, Cohen, versus the guys that are maybe have more touchdown potential, more carry potential, but don't necessarily have that extra bonus because they don't catch the ball as much. Let's take a look now at the running backs 37 through 48 as we continue to look at our running back rankings from a consensus basis. Both Dolphin guys sort of toe the line here. Matt Breida in the first list, Jordan Howard on this list. I think we all would agree that Breida has more upside than Howard. And then you look at some of the other guys on this list, and Adam, I want to ask you, we've been talking a lot about the guys that you may want to target in this range, but what about some of the guys that are falling in this category here? Kerryon Johnson, Marlon Mack. You could throw Tevin Coleman in as the second guy for the 49ers. How do you look at this backfield situation? Are these just some good values for these guys?
Well, I don't think Nyheim Hines is really worth anything, and I don't have any interest in Jordan Howard. Sony Michel scares me a little bit, but a lot of these guys are pretty good value. And yeah, Kerryon Johnson, Marlon Mack, especially if you just want to get off to a good start. If you're willing to draft Kerryon Johnson and Marlon Mack and say, there's almost no chance they're going to be contributing for me in the second half of the season, but I've got some good running backs. Maybe I can just get away with get away with them. Or maybe I went 0 RB and I want somebody for the first 3 or 4 weeks and I'm just going to figure it out on waivers for the rest of the season. Or maybe you drafted DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor earlier. That's not bad value for Marlon Mack and for Kerryon Johnson, specifically Mack. I just don't really know how much faith we can have in Kerryon Johnson. So yeah, as long as you don't have to rely on them for a full season and you're just doing it to shore up your roster a little bit, it's a good range. The number 4 running back on your team, not bad.
Keith, we saw Alexander Mattison creep into the last spot there at number 48, and we talk a lot about handcuffs. And so I know you're a little bit concerned about Dalvin Cook with his health. You got Mattison there. I've seen both you and Adam take Chase Edmonds a lot, maybe as a just handcuff there for Kenyon Drake, Tony Pollard, somebody that we like to draft as well. And then as you see some of these other running backs that are the second guy or maybe the starter to start the season. But how important are handcuffs? Do fantasy owners need to take those guys, or is it just maybe you try and steal somebody else's handcuff and get that lottery ticket?
I'm probably the least likely to take handcuffs, but I do think when you have the right situation, a team that wants to run the ball a ton, a back that has an injury history or a workload concern, and a backup that we think is very talented. And that's what we have. I think Chase Edmonds, if he gets a chance, he showed us last year, if he gets a chance at 15 to 18 touches a game, he's going to be very good. Same thing with Alexander Mattison. Same thing, I believe, with Tony Pollard, who may actually be slightly better in the passing game than Ezekiel Elliott. So those 3 guys specifically, yes, I'm all about it. I'm not as interested in someone like a Michael P. Ryan, but those type of guys with that type of talent and that type of opportunity, I'm in.
We saw it with Boston Scott last year, too, for Philadelphia. We could see maybe with Darrynton Evans if something were to happen to Derrick Henry in Tennessee. We'll tell you a little bit more about some of these guys when we come back, when we look at some late-round sleepers that you'd be targeting. Guys like maybe Anthony McFarland, who could have an opportunity with the Steelers, and then Darrynton Evans again with the Titans. We'll tell you about late-round sleepers next here on CBS Sports HQ. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. We're wrapping up our running back conversation here. We're going to give you some late-round sleepers, guys that we're targeting close to the double-digit rounds. We'll see how far these guys may fall. And so, Adam, I'll give you the first word. He said he's not concerned about the Steelers running back situation, though. What about you?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned for James Conner, and I think Anthony McFarland's a very interesting prospect because he averaged 7.9 yards per carry 2 seasons ago. Last year wasn't as good, but he had a high ankle sprain that he suffered early in the season, and I think it hampered him for basically the entire year. So I just wonder where he would have been drafted if he had had a healthy season. He was a 4th-round pick. I don't know that they're committed long-term to James Conner. I don't think Benny Snell is the answer. So anybody with a late-round pick, obviously there's a chance that this is a terrible pick and you're dropping him after 1 or 2 weeks. But I think there's an opportunity here. I think he's got a little bit of explosiveness and might be kind of sneaky.
Dave, you talked about how Aaron Jones could be in trouble with A.J. Dillon, and A.J. Dillon seems to be somebody that you're targeting late.
It's true. Whether I get Aaron Jones or not, I want to get A.J. Dillon on my team. He reminds me of Derrick Henry. I don't know if he's going to be quite as good as Derrick Henry is right off the bat. I don't think the opportunities will quite be there. But the Green Bay Packers drafted him in the 2nd round, and it has to be for a reason. It could be beyond something that we know about when it comes to Jones or Jamal Williams. I know that Matt LaFleur said that he wants to use 3 running backs. I think Dillon could be the 2nd best one in Green Bay, and if Aaron Jones gets hurt, he would be the best one in Green Bay. He's a unique type of running back. I'm looking for him in the late rounds. I'm going to hold on to him through the first month of the season and see what I get, too.
Heath, again, the Jaguars don't seem sold on Leonard Fournette. That can make Rock Armstead somebody who has a chance to maybe get more touches. We saw last year in the game that Fournette missed. Armstead was pretty good. Can he do it maybe for a longer stretch if Fournette is not getting that type of work?
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't have time to find his YPC for life from his sophomore year. But yes, Ryquell Armstead, I think, has a very good opportunity with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Anytime they talk about getting rid of a player, that player usually goes away. I know they've said now that Fournette's part of their plans. I think that they're just trying to hold on to him, get him into camp, have him participate, hope some team needs a running back, and then ditch him for a 5th-round pick. I think it's a great opportunity for Armstead here. And remember, even if Fournette's on the team, he had some injury troubles before last year.
He did have some injury trouble. I'm going to give you 2 for the price of 1. I'm going to start with Darrynton Evans, who's somebody I'm going to take with a late-round pick just because I'm nervous about the situation with Derrick Henry coming off 400 total touches. He would be the next man up, the rookie from Appalachian State, and hopefully he takes advantage of a great running team. We didn't see that last year when Henry missed time with the hamstring because Dion Lewis at the end of the rope for him when it comes to his career. I do think it could be a situation where Evans comes in and could potentially help on third downs as well. Maybe take some pressure off of Henry if they're trying to save him for the end of the season. And then I'm going to take a lot of Antonio Gibson. I think the situation in Washington is setting up very favorably for him. Despite a crowded backfield, they're going to use him on passing downs. He could be a little bit more explosive than Adrian Peterson as the backup behind Darius Geis, and we know Geis has a hard time staying healthy as well. Fun conversation on running backs, guys. You guys did a great job as always. Come check us out on Twitch on Wednesday night. Going to be a fun conversation as well. And of course, you can always check us out on our Fantasy Football Today podcast, where we give you the best information, best guests, and certainly the best chance to win your leagues in fantasy in 2020. For Dave, for Heath, for Adam, I'm Jamie. Thank you for watching Fantasy Football Today. Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.